sure to do
We
that.
all wanted to do it.
Yeah, they do. We are live. That's done.
I'd like to call to order the Civil Service Commission meeting this Wednesday, January 12th, 2022. All of the members are present. I'd like to welcome our new auditor, Matt McPeak. Glad that you are with us. That will take us to our personnel action forms. The first one, I think, is Kathy Rose.
We have an extra agenda.
I think
It was just updated, so, oh, okay. Mayor, maybe you can explain Kathy's situation.
Kathy Rose is being promoted just based on her time with the city from step 4 to step 5. It is there, you notice there's a correction on the sheet that says corrected step change date. And that is because I think we had a spreadsheet that showed her anniversary date incorrectly. So we corrected that. And
Yeah, actually, if I can, it was, she was performing those job duties quite a bit earlier than she was actually put into the position. And she brought that to the city's attention and asked that an adjustment made based on the time that she originally was put in that job, even though she
Correct.
wasn't given that title. And I reviewed it and thought that was the appropriate thing to do.
right.
So the step increase is a function of longevity.
Correct.
Yep.
Is there a motion?
I move that we approve Ms. Rose's promotion from step 4 to step 5.
I second that motion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
This is accepted. Let me back up a second because the agenda, I just saw it in the last 30 minutes. I do want to state that the minutes from the last meeting are not available and that I think by consensus, we can deal with those at our next meeting. Get that on
So
record.
agreed.
I agree.
Okay. The next appointment is Tyler Snow. I don't seem to have a form on Tyler Snow.
Is that you? Is that it?
That's his right in front of me. Thank you
problem.
for your help. Okay, Tyler is going to full-time at step 5. Is that what this is saying? As an equipment operator, is that 2?
EQ2, yes.
Okay, looks like EQ 11. And so is this a new hire or?
He's a new employee and I'm trying to remember which department he went into. I believe he had prior experience. That's the higher step.
That I do recall talking to Andy Bayshore about.
Do you remember? any
I
other
don't know what
details?
department though, sorry.
I can get that information. Tyler Snow, which he's with the service department, but his specifically, if he's, which section of the service department, is that the question?
No, I was just
Sewer.
asking if it
Sewer
was a-
department.
Based on our agenda.
Yeah, so.
Oh, it says right there.
Lee's going off the context clues.
If I'm understanding this correctly, Mr. Snow has just accepted an appointment to work for the city, and he's coming in at a EQ equipment operators, step 5 of the equipment equipment operator is 2.
That's right. And it's a bargaining
Those
unit
are
position.
Roman numerals, right?
Roman numeral
Yes.
too. That's
Is
right.
there- Is there a motion?
Move that we accept Mr. Snow's appointment.
I second that motion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It has been accepted. The Elizabeth Ellman now was just added. Do we have a sheet on her? I don't.
So Elizabeth has been hired to the part-time position of Sustainability Programs Coordinator. That was a position that was authorized and created by council in the last budget process. Beginning at the low end of the range of 24-28 an hour. Mhm. I'm not sure, but do you have
Yeah,
it just in case?
full-time or part-time, doesn't matter.
What was the question?
Well, kind of. I mean, think about all the lifeguards.
Right. Well, she's a permanent part-time employee, which differentiates from camp counselors and things like that. That's why, that's the distinction, really.
Any
And
questions?
is
That was added value, Mr. Fischel. Thank you.
the sustainability programs is a part of the mayor's office?
It is, yes. I will state that it's paid partially through the general fund and half general fund and half refuse fund, but reports to me
There a motion?
for whatever it's worth.
Move that we approve Ms. Ellman's appointment.
And I second that motion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It has been approved. Separations, Grant Williams, Police Department Officer. I don't know if I have one of those. Thank you. I don't see anything checked here.
Yeah, it's
It's a
checked,
retirement
he's
outside.
retired effective.
Yep.
If you want to force them to stay, that's
uh,
I think it's
Where
just,
you're
I was just looking, I saw retired checked
It
somewhere.
is under separation.
Well, it must
Okay,
be
there we
so
go.
late.
It's very small.
Okay, that's what I didn't see. All those in
Move that
favor?
we agree to Ken Grant's separation as of December 23rd.
Second,
Oh, I thought you were seconding.
No.
Yeah, I second that motion.
all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have approved that. That takes care of the personnel items. The first item next is unified personnel forms. We talked about this at the last meeting, and I think that would be these all look alike, but I don't think that has happened. I think it is very appropriate that we have uniform. They could be pre-printed for their department if they do them individually. Discussion.
Is there any hardship in presenting uniform?
No, I think my assistant's working on it right now. Is that the question? I think we've been working on that.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's,
Good to go.
let's move forward.
We are.
Mr. Mayor asked to have a discussion about selection of,
Yeah, I just wanted to give you guys an update and keep you in the loop about the chief of police search. So the chief, as you know, retired effective last week, or I guess the week, well, was it last week?
That's Friday.
The 7th of January. We have engaged or are about to engage a firm to help us with the search. Ralph Anderson, which is a national firm that does a lot of chief of police searches. We're also working with, or most likely are going to work with a firm that will assist with the public engagement piece of the process in terms of helping to craft a survey and distribute it, working with different groups throughout the city and helping to craft the candidate profile and just synopsize community feedback in relation to the position. I would imagine that process is going to take the better part of February, probably, the community engagement piece, I would think. And so hopefully we'll have a candidate profile out end of February, early March, and begin to solicit applications to the position. At that time, once we start to receive those applications, I think there's going to be some initial vetting from the search firm, and then there will be an interview committee formed. The details of all of this are being finalized. I'm waiting to work with our search firm to really give us some intelligence and feedback about what they've seen recently work and not work. I do have some in my rough drafts of processes. I have some accommodation for ways to keep the Civil Service Commission membership, either as a representative of the membership or in a whole as a part of that process. You guys have been such an invaluable resource with police department, recruitment in general, and
Thank you.
civil service work around it. So I think it's really important to keep you guys apprised of that and part of the process. So I do expect that you'll have a role in that, and that I'm excited to see the community engagement come forward and kind of see where we end up with and what the next chapter of our department looks like.
What have you done about an interim chief?
So Captain Goff is currently serving as interim chief. And, it's probably going to be at least through April that he'll be in that capacity.
Historically, I sensed that there was something that the Police Chiefs Association helped with. Is there still such an association?
So my understanding is that they have in the past with us and maybe and certainly other agencies help. They have an assessment process where they help with assessing candidates. That is a little bit different than the model that we're looking at. And
That's fine.
I haven't seen that when I've looked at other area searches that have occurred. I haven't seen that be a process. So I'm not sure if that's something, and we might have some insight into it, if that's been a change over the years.
So there is a Ohio Association of Chiefs of Police, and I think they were used in 2007 when Chief Reinhardt was selected. My understanding is that the search firm will take the primary lead in developing the job description. There is something in the civil service rules about the chief of police too, and we can get to that. But once that selection or once the firm engages and puts out a recruitment notice, I would imagine it would also have to conform to posting requirements and everything that the Ohio revised code would require as well. So
Of course, yeah.
I think that that's something to determine whether the Chiefs Association would be an asset in the process or.
Thank you.
So,
Are there any
sorry, just one,
questions? Yeah.
one question. So I think this is a fantastic idea, both the firm and the public engagement possibility piece of that. But as far as cost, is that something that is new to the process since we aren't using, I would imagine, the maybe less expensive Police Chiefs Association? Was this, I don't watch the budget meeting and I should have. Is this borne by where does this come from, this money?
So we have a budget set aside for the Civil Service Commission party every year that we're just taking this all out of. Just kidding. That's a joke. Sorry. So it's not going to be, it's not going to be a free process. I doubt that it was without cost before, but I think we interviewed 3 different firms before selecting this one. The price quotes are roughly in the range of $30,000 to $45,000. The one that we're engaging with is a $35,000 contract. We did provide additional funding in the budget for it. I also had some funds from last year that I held on to for it. And council has an ordinance they're considering to add additional funding. So that it would allow, for example, for the community engagement piece.
Okay, so that's currently not completely funded.
So it's not currently funded through council. I will tell you, I believe strongly enough that it's an important piece of this, that if council doesn't pass that ordinance, there's other funds in our budget that I would just reroute to that.
Is this money come through the police budget or separate?
No, not currently. It's through, we have a civil service contract line item. Or human resource contract.
Yeah, I can't
It's under human resource contract under the civil service budget.
Thank you.
And so the product of the Anderson search is to come up with a list of candidates.
So they go from at the front end doing research with the police department itself. They'll do a climate analysis and provide, they'll be kind of the main point of contact for our officers in terms of what they would like to see in that position. They will work with our public engagement end, whether it's us or a firm that we hire to help us with it. And they'll assimilate information that we've gathered into a candidate profile. They'll create the candidate profile, the candidate brochure. They'll market that. They'll reach out to their own existing network into the networks that would naturally go to potential would-be chief candidates. And then they'll assist throughout the entire interview process until the final selection of the chief. So it's very hands-on from beginning to end.
And
They have, sorry, go ahead.
Who makes the final selection? Is it this committee you're putting together or do you get?
That would be me and with council confirmation. Yeah.
The mayor.
Well, I agree. I just wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I intend to have robust interface with the community. I would like to put together a steering committee to kind of help advise throughout the process. I would like to have an interview committee to help an interview. It's not going to be a decision that gets made in the vacuum at all. It's going to be something that where the input from a variety of people and organizations and stakeholders throughout the community is considered. But ultimately, it has to be a candidate who I can work with, who our government can work with, and who will be good for our police department and our community and surrounding communities. So.
More questions?
Are you anticipating it'll be a national search?
So I would be surprised if it's a truly national search. I would think it's probably going to be a little more regional in nature, just by virtue of who you might find generally attracted to relocating to, Central Ohio. But I don't think that we're not going to stop anybody from applying for the position. And I think that some of the syndicates that they've talked about posting the position will be national in nature.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there isn't anything else, we can move on to our rules and.
You're there?
I printed out what you
I
said.
meant to print it off in color, but I forgot.
Mine is.
I was going to print until I saw that it was color, 99 pages, and I was at home, so I declined.
So what is your pleasure?
Well, let me first say for Matt that this is a process that we began 2 or 3 years ago.
Right, pre-COVID.
And we had gotten, I'm not certain how far through it.
Pretty far though, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so Rachel is new to this, as is Matt. So we have followed Mark. He leads us through the process.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. I think, is it a PDF that
It was a PDF I sent you folks. I'll see if I can find it here real quick, but
Yeah, I didn't print it either because.
I know, because we love the environment.
That's it.
I gotta see if I
I
can.
was chatting
find
with
it.
Elizabeth previously.
I see a John Offenberg Civil Service Rules MAF revised doc from January 6th. Is that the right one?
That is the right one.
Like 2 copies?
Please.
Yes, thank
That
you.
would be great.
Matt, would you like a copy of the Civil Service Rules?
Really?
Or-
Yes, digitally is probably how you
Yeah,
want it.
89 pages,
I want it in paper so I can mess with it, but yeah,
that's what
We can mark it up.
that's
Make
right.
notes.
That's right.
Also,
So-
once I print these two copies, I might not have adequate budget left for the chief, sir.
Oh, well, we'll just explain to the public
We
where our
can-
priorities are.
We'll help you in any way possible.
So just,
I
and
didn't
just,
bring a hat to pass.
and just as a reminder for you two, I'm sure you don't need reminded, but for the two new folks, the civil service rules, first of all, haven't been even looked at since 2006. Second of all, they were, to just be real frank, a cut and paste job by somebody who used to do work for the city many years ago, whose name may or may not be on the cover of this document. And I just felt, and talking to John and Lee and I'm drawing a blank. Who was the other guy? Pat, thank you. That it's just unworkable and unnecessary. So the final version is going to be that you will see an awful lot of strike throughs in here. I mean, because the Civil Service Commission doesn't do about, it was a cut and paste from Ohio Administrative Code that applied to on the state level. So so that's what you'll see here.
As Mark has said, and evidence of that frequently refers to the municipal civil service, not Bexley. There's
Right.
certainly
Good point. That's right.
a lot of places where it says his or he.
Yep. So I'm not,
Just if I could, the other item to consider in context is that in 2006, there was a different administration that had different needs in terms of developing the civil service rules. So that those rules were developed on a contract basis by an attorney. That's
right.
what Mark was alluding to. And so that attorney came to the civil service meetings and billed the city for all of the work that has happened separately. It wasn't the city attorney.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, absolutely correct. Yeah. I was,
So, you know, as we've evolved, Mark has been doing this as a part of his role. And just as we've evolved in separating responsibilities for the Civil Service Commission, like we do the police tests now. We do them. It isn't like the city has hired consultants to do it, which had been what had happened up until.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I think the mayor was referring to and how helpful you folks have been. And it really has,
Yeah.
from what I can tell, a great process that's very Bexley centric instead of, bringing in folks from the outside who try to learn a little bit about Bexley in the process, but not like you folks know. So,
The Blaugrund firm was used for a lot of.
I know.
during the-
I am aware. And it just so happens that this is also a big part of my practice overall, the public sector labor and employment. So I don't know what your pleasure is in terms of how you want to address this, or if people,
If I might just.
oh, sure, I'm sorry.
provide Another little bit of context. So with the premise that we're going to reconsider the rules to get more current, there was also, as I understood it, a change that the negotiated agreements take precedent over what civil service rules may have been promulgated in the past. And so, and that becomes a dominant theory that we have to work upon. And that was the advice that Mark gave us, so that the current rules that we would discuss now and perhaps amend are going to be in conformance with negotiated agreements or elements of the negotiation.
With elements of it.
I'm sorry, turn that, with elements of it, I think overall, the negotiated, what happens with employees in bargaining units really doesn't come before this commission. Almost totally exclusive. I mean, that's almost 100% accurate statement. Now, entry level things, who employees are getting hired into bargaining units, obviously, new hires in the police department in particular. Yeah, that's, you have a huge role with that. But issues about, I mean, it's not happening for anyone listening, but if bargaining unit employees are laid off, they would be laid off consistent with their collective bargaining agreement, not with civil service law. If a bargaining unit employee is disciplined, they would be disciplined under language in the collective bargaining agreement, and their appeal rights would be to arbitration instead of coming here. So the role of all civil service commissions in every city has become smaller just by the nature of collective bargaining, and some changes to civil service law over the years.
Should that statement be in here?
I don't think it's needed to put in there necessary, because all of it's by operation of law. And I would rather avoid too broad of a statement and then, oh, we forgot this one thing and it comes, so I don't think it needs to be in there.
But you can see once you get the copy, that so much of the rules that have been current in 2006 do not apply now.
Okay.
That's why the red items in red have been struck.
Mark, I read the Ohio Revised Code sections about the Civil Service Commission. Are those, I know sometimes, I mean, I didn't do a case law search and make sure that everything was, up to date, but do those reflect, I mean, those are current, right?
Yeah, they're current. Absolutely.
So everything there is going, if we would format things based on what's currently in the revised code, that would all be proper.
Yes, yes, the answer is yes. There is historically.
Sounds like a yes, but,
Well, yeah, the answer is yes.
okay.
No qualifiers. Historically, though, there are things, and so one of the things that section of the statute, I think it's 124.40 of the revised code says, is that the Civil Service Commission shall promulgate rules for carrying out their duties. I'm paraphrasing. That's what these were, or are, I
Okay.
should say. Again, to get you into the weeds and even more, for the state of Ohio and for counties, historically, the Ohio Department of Administrative Services was responsible for all civil service aspects for states and counties, civil service commissions for cities. DAS promulgated a bunch of the stuff that's in here in rules for cities and counties. I'm sorry, for the state and counties that really aren't applicable to cities at this point, as Lee indicated. Frankly, they don't even do it for counties anymore. They only do it for the state too. So there's been a lot of changes, a lot of scaling back of civil service requirements. I mean, for example, the normal rule used to be, when I say used to be 30 or 40 years ago, was that all positions, with the exception of very, limited, I don't want to use the word menial, but with the exception of some unskilled positions, all positions were tested. Everybody had to take a civil service test to get a job, whether it was a secretary, whether it was an EQ2 that we talked about, or a dispatcher or a police officer. Now, almost all of that's gone by the wayside, except for police officers, because under civil service law in Ohio, the rule is, and under the Constitution, that public employees had to be hired based on merit and fitness. And we've gotten way past the idea that the only way to do merit and fitness or measure it is through a test. In fact, that's probably a bad way. So merit and fitness still applies. It's just usually an interview and, the traditional things that we're more used to in the workplace, I
That
think.
makes sense. So the standard applies, is just the instrument has changed, or the process has changed on how to determine merit and fitness. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
that's right. Absolutely.
That makes sense.
So when someone is hired, like Tyler Snow.
Yeah.
EQ2,
Uh-huh.
when he's introduced to the city personnel department or
If there was a
there
person,
was a person.
Right.
But I mean, what I'm saying, he's introduced to his service with the city.
right.
Is there any discussion about his rights as an employee at that point? Is he made aware of the fact that he's in a negotiated position?
I'm sure he is. Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt. And that I'm sure he is told in general terms, what's in that contract, because and oftentimes by the union, not just necessarily management, because they're trying to sell, the union, sell themselves to the new employees. So yes, now, do they get into details? Likely not, but that does happen. Thanks, Matt.
So he's hired, does he have to join the union?
He doesn't have to join the union, but whether or not he joins, he's still subject to the provisions of the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, so the discussion of his job protection at that point, it should be clear to him that his job protection is a part of the negotiated agreement.
Yes, that should be clear to him.
Nothing, in addition to that negotiated agreement, there's also a right to an appeal to a civil servant.
That's right, because A, there's not, and B, that's not normally what is, yeah, right. No, it's a good question to so we understand how it works on a practical level and not just words on paper, right?
So I have a question as far as I'll get up to date on what's been done over the last however long you guys have been in the middle of this process. But as far as the work that we're going to do, and of course, I'm thinking of charter review, because it feels slightly similar, although this seems, like we have more capability to chop and easier. How will we do this, Mark? Do we need to do this at our quarterly meetings? Could we schedule other meetings? Because this feels like huge gaps in
It is.
time.
It's
And we
really
have had
tough.
other meetings. I mean, we much of this work till this point was done in early morning meetings.
Right, and we would go
7:30.
through 20 pages and people would say, okay, is everybody go with page 2? So we can do it that way. I am happy. You can certainly individually contact me and we can talk about it or communicate via email or whatever if you have any questions. You obviously can't talk to each other outside of a meeting about these rules. So that is, and again, that's like Lee just said, that's how we did it. I think we're probably, unless somebody has a better memory than me, we're probably starting over from the beginning. I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that way Rachel can participate fully as
Although
well.
perhaps if it's still good and it still looks good, we can move more quickly.
Right,
Right.
that would be the hope.
Okay.
But I don't know where we've stopped. I don't remember it.
So then,
Go ahead.
so then logistically, can we just establish those meetings? I think if with enough advance notice, I could make a morning work, and then we could make some progress.
Normally, when we end this meeting, we would talk about, do we want to do that?
Okay.
When, where, what time? If that is acceptable
Mhm.
to you. Mark, as I reread it, I had some thoughts that
Okay,
one that I wanted to share with Rachel is that we struck the whole section on performance reviews. And my sense was that was done because the reviews were not being done.
not by this commission, right?
They weren't being done
Oh,
by
that's
all
right.
departments.
By all departments. You're right about
What
that.
I
Yeah,
meant
yeah,
to say about that.
you're right.
I still question whether they should be done or not, but I'm not hot on that topic. It just,
They should be done. But again, it's easy for us to sit here and say they should be done. It's a lot harder for department heads to do it because it's not an easy thing to do.
But in the police department, it is required.
Yeah, they do it in the police department. They definitely do it in the police department. Absolutely.
right.
And I'm sure it's part of their certification and all sorts of things. Yep.
Two other things, and I may be wrong on this. I think it says that employees cannot sit for exam again for 6 months. I think the police department rules are they can't sit again for a year. Does that sound right to you?
Sit for a,
If they have taken an exam and they didn't make the list, let's suggest, that they can't sit for another exam for a period of time.
well, I think you mean the NTS, the National Testing Service?
I think for promotions is what you're probably referring to.
Okay, then I missed
Why don't
that part.
My understanding is that for promotions, there is not a written exam. So that for sergeants, it's pretty much an oral process.
Right, well, it's the process, so I will look at the language to remind myself, but a couple things. One is, you're right, the NTN is the National Testing Network. So the National Testing Network is what Bexley and most other cities now use instead of conducting their own promotional exam that you guys would proctor and make sure, I'm sorry, entry level exam, I'm sorry. And so that wouldn't apply at all, because we don't, if somebody takes the NTN or that test, and they take that test and they show up, and we may or may not, the department may or may not hire that person or even interview that person. So that's why I'm thinking it's probably promotional. And I'll look at the language, but as a practical matter, when a promotional exam is given, a list is established, as you folks, as the two of you know, and that list is good for at least a year. So there wouldn't even be another exam for at least a year. So I'm not,
No,
I don't think it's a year.
obviously I'll look at it.
I mean, hypothetically, if you're just using the year as a time period, but I think that, that it's a shorter time period, at least for patrol officers.
No, I'm talking about if a test is given today and a promotional list is created for sergeant, a new test won't be given for at least a year. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm hearing.
if it were patrolman, it would be
Right,
normal.
But that's what I'm getting.
Right.
to. My understanding is that there is no test for the sergeant position. So.
There's a test. It's not a written exam. It's graded.
I'll be right back. I have to
Thank
do a
you.
school pickup.
Yep.
It's oral.
Right, but it's still graded, and a list is still created by people who, however they decide to do that. It's more subjective than check A, B, C, D as an answer, but that's normal too. And it's a better test, frankly.
And it's different than the NTS.
NTN, you mean?
NTS.
Yeah,
So,
you're right.
Rachel, what happened is up until maybe 2015.
Good guess.
We did paper and pencil tests. When there was a position that was open, we went to the high school.
Mhm.
We posted the position. People were
100
given
would show
the
up.
test. The people came from out of state, and it was a defined date and time, and the tests were graded. We graded the tests, and then the top 20, let's say, were given the physical requirements at the high school, doing the track and all of that. So in 2015, that changed. We did research. We went to NTN, which is out of Seattle. They don't do paper and pencil. It's all electronic. And instead of factual situations on paper, on printed, it's video scenarios,
Okay.
which are close to, real life situations, and scores are accumulated that way. And then when a position gets posted and the process begins, the captain has traditionally looked at a cutoff point and then decided, let's say that there are 10 candidates above that cutoff point, we'll start doing the backgrounds.
Okay.
So it's, that's unique to the police department under the civil service rules.
If nobody else tests it. Goes back to American Fitness, but positions are posted, they're posted internally first and then externally, and then people can apply, submit your application, and we interview you.
Okay.
And the criteria on the positions are something that we can advise for police officers. I know that there were changes in terms of, like, I remember marijuana use. what the look-back period for that was, and whether or not that's still gonna be current, we can.
That's a good point, yeah.
Talk about that, and that is something that is in for.
Marijuana use or being caught smoking marijuana?
Being caught and how long ago you've done it. and
I was
things
gonna
like
say,
that.
there's a
No,
difference.
just remember that, and this has
That is
happened,
what it is.
as you know. The the elements of the posted position is the standards to which any candidate is held to. So even if they go through the background check, if they get to the polygraph, which is the last part of the selection process, and the examiner goes over what those elements are, and there's a variance between the polygraph result and what the posted position is, that's always reported.
You should actually, it would be interesting. I find it very interesting. You should look at, I'm sure we can get it for you, the actual questions that they ask at that point in the process.
I've never seen them.
They are very, I haven't seen Bexley's actually. I've seen in other departments. They are very intrusive, but legitimately intrusive because you're asking police candidates, but it's really interesting. And,
It is
but
interesting.
it's a pretty thorough process. And then the background, I mean, that's just
Background.
forever.
That,
It's a huge
the
process.
Detective Bureau, once there's a posted position, a lot of time in the Detective Bureau is used in doing background investigations. I mean, we've had candidates, from Cleveland, and they go on the road and interview neighbors
In a
and.
home visit,
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
exactly.
right.
And we've had candidates wash out based.
Oh, sure.
Mhm.
I
Well,
have- oh,
Go ahead, John.
Mine's unrelated.
No, I think you have a list. Do you have more to ask Mark?
I just have one more. It had to do with partisan and what people were allowed to do.
Mhm.
Is partisan defined someplace?
It is defined, yes and no. And it's defined by examples. But basically partisan political activity means either I'm an R or a D and I'm actively supporting them, other than here's some money and stuff like that.
I'm just saying.
Oh, is it defined? Is it in here?
Not defined in here.
Well, there is, I think there is a rule on it that gives it that, I think there is a rule on it.
There is a rule on partisan, which I read, but I, my unsophisticated reading was, I don't know what, I think I know what it means, but I really don't know under
Like
the
how
law,
broad,
but
how broadly does it go? Is that
Yeah,
kind of what you're saying, John?
So,
Yeah.
so to answer your
It's partisan under the law is what I'm really.
So what partisan is under, so again, the idea, if you take a step back and, the idea is that we don't want people, Merit and Fitness, we don't want people hired because they support Republicans or they support Democrats.
All of the do's and don'ts are there.
Right.
It was clear.
So right. And so the way the law defines it is through examples of do's and don'ts. And so I can't give you a, 2-sentence definition, but
That's fine.
basically the minute that I decide to run for an office that requires me to be potentially to be an R&D, even if I'm running as an independent, that's partisan political activity.
Let's move on.
Swallowed wrong, not COVID.
Any more questions? Can we get into it? Did you have more?
I don't have any questions right now.
Mark, take us.
All right, so, and again, if, I have not updated the table of contents, that will happen once we have a final product. But if you go to page 1, chapter 1, basically a lot of this is cleanup. We still need the public notice. I put in, A2 there in the middle of the paragraph because public notice is still, it's silly to say we're going to put it in a newspaper, posting on the city's website. Selection and duties of persons connected with the examination. Again, none of that happens anymore. So That's why those changes are there. What I don't recall, if you look on page 2, and please stop me if I'm just whipping through this too fast. I don't recall what I meant by collaboration with city department there at the top of page 2. I have to give that some thought.
Well, and you have a comment down here on examiners or board of examiners,
Yeah,
So on
and
page 12,
page 2. I think.
page
Well, our
2.
numbering is differently.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. I purposely sent the same thing to everybody. How did your numbering get different?
Like, I think, so chapter 1, powers and duties, that I see a collaboration with city department is on page 11.
page 11 of our print.
I'm with
But
you,
the rest,
Mark.
the rest of the table of context essentially.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's confusing, but I think I can probably,
Yeah, we
Figure
can
it
roll
out.
with it.
yeah.
all right. So again, chapter 1, let's just, so we're looking again, I've just tried to modernize and update the powers and duties. Again, as you pointed out, Rachel, consistent with 124.40 of the revised code. I just need to go back and give some thought to what I meant by collaboration with city department. I have no recollection about that, sorry. And then, again, even in 1-5, the meetings, there's no reason to say it's going to be in city council chambers. I mean, it can be. Someday it might be at that our new senior center.
I saw that when I reread it.
Yeah, it's
I
like,
was concerned about
Right.
it. If this is closed, I agree. Let's take out.
yeah, I mean, it just,
So just on this point, I mean, I don't want to.
Yeah.
This to the ground, but so Ralph Anderson and Associates is coming in, outside consultant. to the
Right.
city. Would that be the section 1.3 collaborate special examiners outside official service of the city? In that context?
perhaps. I mean, I really need to, I'm just putting a big question mark there. Go back and look at it.
Actually, it does seem as if it would apply. I'm trying to, this is my first reading. I'm not sure to what effect. It just basically says that we would be like using them pursuant to,
So.
Chapter
and-
1,
And
1,
so
3.
that's where I'm headed is, like, since the mayor is the appointing authority. And this rule says that the commission may designate special examiners. Do we need to be involved with that, or is this just for something else that other positions that?
it's hard to imagine
question.
when else we would invoke a 1-3 except for a very important position, right?
Yeah, except,
How do you define important?
well,
Well, see, it says this, exceptional qualifications, and then it lists out some things.
Yeah.
Where persons qualified to prepare such are not readily examinable or available, sorry. I mean, I'm not sure what the ultimate effect would be, but it does seem to apply, interestingly.
So, and again, what I'm thinking is if you follow everything the way that the mayor is going to scope it out, and follow the process, and then someone in the community comes back and says, well, wait a second, what about 1.3? Do we have any?
no, because it's only about connected with examinations. There's no examination here. I think with the new chief, there won't be, I mean, so I think what this is designed to do is to prevent, and this is total guess on my part, the language that was in 1.3 is designed to make it clear that the Civil Service Commission cannot say to the police department, because that's really where it is, you're going to use the Ohio Association of Chiefs of Police. If the police chief says, the head of the department says, no, I want to use X instead of Y. I think that's what it says here, is that you have to make sure that it has to be done consistent with the wishes of the department where the testing is being done. But again, the lack of testing, lack of an examinations that occur mean that this section is almost irrelevant. That's why I think we were taking it out.
So just to be clear.
Yeah.
So if this is irrelevant here, for the chief of police, but if we do an oral exam for promotion.
That's where it could be.
sergeants, is there a different in interpretation from this rule to the oral exam for a sergeant?
There could be. In other words, again, if you're doing an oral exam if you're doing a promotional exam for sergeants, what this section basically is, I reread it now, says that you can't say, to use my example, to the police department, we're the Civil Service Commission and you shall use the Ohio Association of Chiefs of Police or any other group. And I know you wouldn't do that, but I think what this is saying is that you can use outsiders to engage the actual promotional examination, but only with the consent of the department head.
Isn't that what was deleted though?
Right, that's why I'm saying maybe we should keep it, now that I'm looking at it. I didn't say that. That's what was deleted. And again, it was deleted, I think initially, I deleted it because it just happens, it never happens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think I said collaboration with city department, that maybe what I meant to do is go back and replace it with language. This is very helpful to discuss this. Replace it with language that said, if you're going to use an outsider, that it needs to be done collaboratively between the department that's affected and the Civil Service Commission.
But then just to make a little bit more of a distinction, if it happens where the mayor is the sole appointing authority and the safety director, does that come into play?
It would never come into play because the safety director is unclassified.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry, you mean as the safety director, he's appointing the chief?
Right. Isn't that how the process goes?
No, yes, it is, but it would only come into play if there's an actual examination. So that's why, because it says selection and duties of persons connected with examinations. And the only actual examinations that the city does are promotional examinations for a police officer to go to sergeant. Again, they're oral, but it's still an examination.
Yeah, I was looking through here to see if at any point they say another noun to broaden the category, but only examination is used.
Right.
So it isn't hiring, sometimes you'll get a list of nouns, hiring process, examination, recruitment, and that's not, only examination is used.
Yep.
So do you have more questions? Any follow-up, Lee?
No, I don't. I think that's a kind of clarity that, I don't want to go through this. Practically speaking, we get to May, the mayor makes a choice, and then somebody in the community comes back and says, well, there are rules that weren't followed.
Yeah. They would have a hard time doing that with the chief position.
Two thoughts. I think he just collaborated with us.
Yeah, good point.
And the second thought is our involvement with the police department is only in hiring. So if there's a test for the sergeants, it's not under civil service, is it?
It is.
It is.
It absolutely, it is. In fact, back in here, you'll see there's provisions in here that talk specifically about your role with promotions in the police department.
But you've still always said to us the contract overrides.
Okay, that is a very fair statement. So let me qualify or explain myself a little more. The contract doesn't speak to promotions.
Okay.
It falls back to you folks. So that's why, yes, the contract overrides. So if we put something in the contract and agree with the union, this is the process we're going to use, it could, but it's not in the contract. So you guys do it. You folks
We
do
had
it.
said we were only involved in the hiring, so that's a refinement of my understanding.
Yes, yes.
But the two positions in the department, practically speaking, the chief and the captain's position, are not part of the bargaining unit.
Correct. Exactly.
So that, yeah, I mean, I can imagine if you got into the weeds on that, you'd have some issues.
Oh, we can get into the weeds, but we don't need to.
Yeah.
We can if you want
I
to.
mean, I'm just.
No, you're absolutely right.
It was-
There are so much case law on so many minutia points of promotions in police and fire departments. It's crazy.
Well, this may have happened before you became city attorney. When Dawn Overly was promoted to sergeant, do you remember this?
I'm
There was
finished
a
it 'cause
complaint.
Oh, it was before I was city attorney, but I represented the city in that lawsuit that disappointed police officer fired. Yep.
Right. And, we had followed everything
Yes, you
correctly.
did.
And,
Right.
there was, I think it was one educational element that was the
Yeah,
dispute was about, but again, I want to do everything that we can to prevent
right.
things like that from reoccurring.
So looking at 1.4, I'm just the utility of this, Mark. So is my understanding that all of the paragraphs that we've been discussing right now are really relevant only for the only existing examinations, which are oral examinations for promotion? Is that right?
In the police department only.
Okay.
Correct. That is right.
So this
Again,
is a very niche chapter.
well, yes, now it is. When it was first written, who knows when, pre-2006, it applied to other positions within the city.
Okay.
But that's right. Now, again, that doesn't mean that the city could say, you know what, from now on, we want the Civil Service Commission to be responsible for promotions. I don't even know where it would be, in the rec department. You could do that. I don't think you should, but,
I can't imagine a
That's
scenario in which that would
Right.
occur.
right, of course not. So it is very limited application. That's correct.
So if that's true, if we're gonna keep the language, maybe we put it somewhere else. I don't know how much of a moving around thing we're doing, but when I start reading rules, I'm like, okay, we're getting into it. And then when I get into this with the examinations piece, I'm like, well, this is barely relevant ever. Like, could we stick it back in the back, or does it need to stay there? Do you see what I'm saying?
It's specifically defined under police,
Well,
because practically
or
speaking.
you're saying rename it to
Well,
talk about what it is more
Right,
specifically?
To more
That makes
accurately
sense.
reflect the reality of the whole process. Because,
So name the chapter better so that people understand what they're looking for. Cause I mean, I am a decent reader of law and rules and I'm still kind of trying to understand.
Again, a lot of
Well,
this is a
that's
result
what
of cutting and pasting from the Ohio Administrative Code. So that's why you see it here. And I mean, even look at it, there's 1.4, it says state. I mean, I caught it and said we're gonna instead of city. I mean, it's a direct cut and paste, except the word commission was put in there.
So, okay. So, I mean, I guess that we can worry about that later, just like what we did with charter, where we kind of can talk about moving things around. But while we're here, I see that there is a comment, delete reference to audit under 1.4.
I think that's chapter 8. I believe that my recollection is that is chapter 8 deals with audits, and that's why I put the note there to delete that reference, because there isn't going to be,
Doesn't apply.
it doesn't apply. That's right.
Okay. So we would just delete the reference to chapter 8, delete the word audits. But does the rest of it apply? Almost seems a bit like a restatement of 1.3 to a point.
It seems a restatement of what, it seems, I mean, again, I'm not saying that I thought this at a time, but I may have, is that's another reason to get rid of current 1.3 is because current 1.5, which would become 1.4, covers it anyway. It says you can appoint somebody. Again, I just don't understand the purpose of 1.3, the more I think about it.
So, okay, so the final is on this.
You're talking about old 1.3.
Old 1.3, yes.
And that is special examiners outside official service.
No,
Yes.
that would be new 1.3. That's old 1.4.
Oh, I don't have these old.
Oh, my God. How did theirs print differently than mine and John's?
I just. turn out-
What do you, what?
Is there a different one? Or?
See.
No, it's the same one.
The old one
Oh, I see what you're saying.
is-
It have the strike throughs. I think that's the only difference.
Oh, you didn't?
Yeah.
Well, that's a big difference. You should have the
You
strike.
just have the comments.
Oh.
We can, for the purpose of today, I think we can keep going through. But so I think what I'm hearing you say, Mark, is that we can coalesce this. It's
Exactly right.
so we could.
Very slim possibility.
So we could keep it, but we should probably just coalesce it into the few sentences that may, at some point in time, if all stars align, ever be used.
I think that is a very good summary.
Okay, so that would,
And so that would also apply with chapter 8 as well with examine. The only examinations are going to be specifically for the police department.
In all likelihood, but I think doing it a step at a time, otherwise you're gonna confuse the heck out of me.
summarize into a few sentences that could be relevant potentially, maybe someday.
Right. If all the stars align, exactly. Well, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Do you know how to turn the generators on now?
No.
Well,
Sure, the part, I think the part is on it.
Because, so to me, so the meetings is helpful. That's actually useful info that
Yes, it is.
I would put somewhere else so that people see it right off the bat. I agree about deleting the location. So I think that that's actually the most useful info I've encountered so far. Do you agree, John? So, okay.
So,
It almost makes sense to go. Never mind.
so in chapter 2, the two of you aren't gonna have all the strike throughs, and there's a ton of strike throughs.
I see that,
Again, because number one, there's things in here that shouldn't even be under the bailiwick of the Civil Service Commission. For example, the old rules, the current rules, I should say, have a definition of active work status. That's just, there's no reason Civil Service Commission ever worries about that.
We have used in the margin as.
Yeah, we just don't have the.
Oh, you don't know what was deleted. They're
Well,
just.
we can see some of it. It just
Yeah,
doesn't have the
definitions,
numbers,
right.
yeah.
That is so weird.
We'll.
No, we'll figure it out.
So do we need other definitions here?
I can print it out if you want that way.
No,
It's fine.
It's okay.
Okay.
Are there other, I mean, there's no new definitions that I could think of that is the first
And then-
one that
and then
we're
we-
keeping.
And then we jump, oh, I see. There's more that come.
Yeah,
Then appointment categories, then break in service.
again, a lot of these definitions come from the revised code. Not all of them. Some of them are just traditional civil service definitions, if you will. Again, if you want to look, well, I won't say what page it's on, because that's a certification and certified eligible list. So again, that's something that you might do in the context of a promotion, maybe. Is that you will certify a list and say, this is the eligible list as a result of this oral examination that was given on such and such a date. We're certifying that they finished in this order of the scoring order.
Okay.
But otherwise, you would never do that, because a certified eligible list means a list that's generated as a result of a civil service examination of some sort.
So that raises the question, should we? So
You-
we do police examinations and you go through the process of the interview. You have the ranked order, but that order can get shuffled after the
Right.
psychological.
Yeah.
Or the polygraph.
So you don't really do it there. The only place I think you do it still is with promotions to sergeant. That, again, somebody's doing,
Or captain.
or captain, that's possible too, that's right. Yep, exactly.
Okay, so again, pretty niche here.
What page are you on for that?
Well, we have different pages.
Or what section?
We are on chapter 2 and just going through the definitions. And most of them are going away, in my recommendation.
Almost all of it. That's chapter 3.
Oh, is chapter 3 audit?
Audits.
See, that's what I was referring to earlier. It wasn't 8, it was 3 that goes away, because you don't do that ever. And I don't even know, you would never do that. Again, this is something I'm happy to share with you, my early days of practice when I used to work on this stuff, but nobody wants to hear those stories.
I do.
Well, then you have a problem. And it used to be, again, primarily on the state and county level, that you'd have these job descriptions and employees could file an appeal to the state and county equivalent of a civil service commission, which was the state personnel board of review, and they could look at a job description and say, no, you're being required to do job duties outside your job description. You should be reclassified to X, or they have to stop making you do those job duties. Or I've given you no job duties to do and taken away all your job duties, which is also a violation of civil service law. Again, I'm getting the weeds on it. But
Page are you on?
you don't do any of that. What page am I
I think
on?
we-
I think we were looking through the definition.
It was page 13, although I jumped there because Lee mentioned it and because of my ADD.
Well, I mean, so essentially, chapter 2 and chapter 3 is construction.
Right.
I don't even.
See, because it's all struck, so that's why you don't see it on your version.
Well, there is, it's here, the sections that are deleted are.
Oh, I see it. I see
larger,
it. Yeah, I see it.
But in reality, there's no practical application.
Okay, so all right. I see. So it's not chapter 8, it was chapter 3 that you said, Mark.
Correct.
Refers to audits.
I was
and so-
confused by that.
So
That's
then,
right.
when that gets adjusted, we'll just delete the references to chapter 3 and audits and then take out that
Exactly.
language.
All of the chapters will have to be.
Can I go back to page 6?
I can follow page 6 because you have the same copy as me. Yes.
Yes.
What section?
What section?
Or what definition?
Yeah, what
No, the definition was the motion. This is
Oh,
silly, but it says classification for which. Why isn't it just classification which carries?
you're right. That is improper grammar. Thank you.
Down at the bottom, you have a comment more than 30 days, assuming emergency appointment is a maximum of 30 days. You are, I'm assuming, questioning should it be more.
Correct. That's right. And again, here's the practical reality. This language is was in civil service law because they didn't want people to screw around and say, I'm gonna make an emergency appointment for 4 years and not go through the civil service process. The reality is, again, we don't go through the civil service process like you used to. And so the mayor, because he's the main appointing authority in the city, maybe the only one, can say, I'm gonna hire somebody on an emergency basis. Doesn't even have to use the word emergency. I'm just gonna hire somebody. And he can do that as long as the money's there and, all that, those other things. So emergency appointment doesn't even have a lot of meaning.
Would that like apply with the interim chief? Is that, or acting
No,
chief?
not even that. An emergency appointment would apply in a situation where you kind of say, oh crap, we have major issues with, and we need an engineer a city engineer employed by us for the next 30 days. Or
Okay,
something like that.
Feature gets called up for military duty.
Right.
I'm throwing out an example.
It could be an example of an emergency appointment.
well, there's a temporary appointment as
There's
well.
temporary too. That's
So I
right.
think that's probably,
Right.
It's hard to understand the difference there.
And I don't think there really is a whole lot of a difference. Again, civil service law is historically, and it's not as bad as it used to be, so overly technical. I might as
So
well
how
have gone
about
in it.
one that's called temporary/emergency.
Or can we just get rid of emergency appointment? Is that term
Yes,
used or defined
We can
anywhere
get
else?
rid of emergency appointment,
Because
I
I
believe.
think what I'm hearing is it has a limited use anyway, and it has maybe a twin brother called temporary, and so, or fraternal.
We knew what you meant, not identical.
Okay.
So just on another point, that maybe some context for Rachel, the difference between classified and unclassified.
Sure, so
I'm
under,
a
a-
little bit familiar with this as a
Oh,
public
I'm
employee.
sorry, I'm
No,
sorry.
I mean, I know what I am, but I don't know the details.
well, you're unclassified because you're an assistant attorney general, and by statute, they're all unclassified.
I've always been unclassified,
Right,
like
yeah.
as an attorney.
Yeah, right, that's right. So under civil service law, everybody's in a classified position unless they meet one of the defined exceptions. Some of those exceptions are defined by the type of position, and some of those exceptions are defined by the type of job duties that somebody might perform. Most of the exceptions that would apply to Bexley, most of them are in 124.11 of the revised code, and there's just a laundry list of exceptions. And so, for example, I am sure that when the mayor hired his new executive assistant, he did not tell her if she's classified or unclassified, right?
I think I did.
Oh, you may have. Oh, that's
Sorry.
terrible. But she's clearly unclassified, whether we told her that or not,
You know.
because of the types of job duties. She holds a fiduciary relationship to the appointing authority. So that's
Interesting.
one example of unclassified.
That is a little bit nuanced, and I'm sorry, we're getting off track, and I really love to stay on track. Because some administrative assistants that I've worked with have been classified.
And some are unclassified because under 124.11.8 of the revised code, some of them many of them don't do this kind of work that Natalie does. An appointing authority, an elected official actually has the authority to designate up to three or four administrative assistants or administrative or clerical people as unclassified regardless of their job duties,
Okay,
just to have those personal assistants.
okay.
Again, most of the people here are classified except for those people who are unclassified except for those people in bargaining units.
Just to, real quickly, and not to interrupt, point of order, the rec board has a 5:30 meeting here.
Mhm.
And just so you know,
was suggesting historically, we went for an hour and a half and quit. If somebody disagrees with that, but that's why I've been
Yeah.
tracking time a little bit.
I just wanted you're going to start to see some folks head in and I think there might have, on our calendar, this is a 4 to 5. So I think the rec board had to be rescheduled. So I think that was just some miscommunication internally. So I apologize if you start getting looks, but you're good to go. Keep going. I'll stop talking.
Good.
Certainly.
I have a mantra of spelling bee to get to, so I'm gonna be right on time, so we're good.
Mark, what page are you on?
Well, I'm just going through shouldn't be a loaded question, but it is. Again, I'm going through some of these definitions and, the more I look at, the more there are other ones that can probably be taken out, but I don't want to go overboard either. For example, on your page 8, John, there's something that's called open examination, means an examination open to anyone, whether or not already employed in the city, who meets the qualifications established for a given classification or position. Basically, what that meant was entry-level examination for entry-level positions. There's only, and I'll put it in air quotes, one position that has any entry-level examination, and you don't even administer it, and it's police officers with an NTN, with the National Testing Network. So I don't think it hurts to keep it in here, because maybe someday we go back to something, but you're gonna look at these things and say, even after it's revised, and say, why? And it's a fair question, but I don't want to go overboard either. That's what I'm saying.
So let's say that we go overboard with, in precise terms, let's say we go overboard. Do these definitions exist in, somewhere else in city documents, somewhere else?
No.
Like, so this is not, they're not being duplicated here anyway. So this is unique.
Probably not, with maybe a few minor exceptions, but yeah,
Okay.
they're not just someplace else.
Okay.
Again, I don't think anything's a real big issue, but, do you need the definition of pay period in the civil service rules? Probably not, but it doesn't hurt to be, because all it says is the period of time during which the payroll is accumulated is determined by the appointing authority. I mean, that's not a civil service thing. But I think we should take that.
Yeah, I think that the longer something gets, the more unhelpful it can be, especially if it's not offering relevant information.
On the same page, Mark,
Mhm.
promotion means the act of placing an employee in a position or classification for which carries a higher salary.
Oh, yeah.
range than previously held.
For which,
We have frequently seen when they are changing departments and getting a higher salary, is that a promotion? When, they leave sewer and go to street maintenance, or
yeah, I mean, if you're going to,
does this cover it? So.
oh, yeah.
Okay, move on. Thank you.
Or I'm interested in cleaning this up to remove things that are not gonna be helpful to someone, us or anyone else. So if you see anything in there, I agree, pay period. I mean, some of these things, plain meaning, right?
Right. I mean, I think as I'm going through this, and being reminded of what we've done or what we started to do, is those definitions are gonna be down to maybe 2 to 3 pages, and they should be that way.
So temporary appointment, did get beefed up.
Yeah, and that's language from the Ohio Revised Code, actually, that I added to this definition. So really, I mean, there's a definition and it's fine, we have it there, but we can't deviate from the revised code. Unless it's in the charter.
Most people don't know the revised code. But you
I don't know the sections that Mark's referring to.
Well, why would you? I deal with it all the time, so. I don't know a lot of, the more I know about what I do, the more I realize there's a ton of things I don't know anything about. Just reminds me. So chapter 3, I think we're in agreement, goes away. Right?
Because there's no,
You'd never do this.
we never can do it, or we never elect.
You
to
never
do it.
can do it.
So we don't, it's not even an option for us. Like if we decided to get very power hungry guys, and then we decided we needed to do it, could we do it?
Yes, if you basically required if you would again, this is gonna be a more long-winded answer than you want, but
Okay, we're getting our money.
you would have to create a classification plan for the city and somehow convince the city to adopt that classification plan. You would then have to have job descriptions that are reflective of that classification plan. So if I have again, I'm using bargaining into positions, which wouldn't even apply. So that means it's even fewer things. If I have a rec department assistant 1 and a rec department assistant 2, then the rec department assistant 1 would have to have some specific defined job duties that don't completely overlap with the 2. He or she would come to you and say, hey, they're making me do two's job duties. I want to be paid like a 2. That's the scenario under which you could do this. Again, like I said before, the only time I've ever seen this happen is on the state and county level, and they don't even do it anymore. That was it was late 80s, early 90s when I last dealt with that.
But these are all handled by negotiated agreements.
Almost all of them, that's right. And the other ones are, more realistic of what goes on with most employers. You don't like what I'm assigning you? Go tell someone who cares. I mean, you'd be more polite than that, but you don't get to appeal the fact that I'm making you do 6 mail runs a week instead of 2 or whatever.
Because this is not an audit in the traditional sense of a financial audit. This is an audit of whether or not the job description is being adhered to and applied correctly.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, then I agree. If we don't have any, it's hard to imagine any scenario like that could occur, so. Okay, that sounds good.
Chapter 4.
So the interesting thing is here, you could still hear appeals. There are limited classified civil service employees who, if you look at 4.2A, if the city decides to demote them, involuntarily disability separate them, abolish their job, lay them off, well, I put the word demotion in there specifically, suspend them or fire them for cause. So for classified employees, it could come to you.
Can you give me an example of who would be in that category?
I'm having a hard time making it because we're so sparsely staffed. The front desk person, that person's a classified civil service employee. So if the decision was made, we're gonna fire you because we don't like the way you tie your shoes, that would not be for just cause.
Can I interrupt? Since the mayor is here, let's talk about when we're gonna meet next.
I would love to, but I just got a call from a daughter who is distressed after a tryout for theater. I gotta go pick her up at school.
I've
So-
dealt with that before.
Can someone just hit the end button and close my laptop whenever this is done?
Yeah, do they know how to start it then?
Yeah, they have their own thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we can
Thank
do
you.
that.
Sorry, guys. But yeah,
See ya.
you can-
Whatever works for you, works for me.
Right.
Thanks.
Well, why don't we do that since if that's okay, John, I think that's a good idea since it's 5:24, we
Yeah.
want to be respectful.
There's suggestions. Mark, do you need a certain amount of time?
I mean, look, no, if we decide it now, and are we looking at a quarter or are we looking at trying to find some day to get together and keep plowing through this?
The latter, if you all agree.
I agree.
That's fine. You tell me what you're looking at and I'll tell you if I'm available, and
I'm the only one here not employed.
So we
I barely am employed, so.
typically would meet again in April, is that correct?
Correct.
So, something in February or March, I mean, I would envision were you thinking monthly meetings or were you thinking?
That works for me. I think monthly makes sense, but I don't care.
Do we have a goal to finish this?
No.
Should we establish a goal?
Then we have to adhere to it. I'm just
By
It,
rule.
kidding.
go ahead.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
It's hard to establish an end date when meetings have been interrupted.
it's true. Still,
I
we could
would
shoot
have
for
us
something
take
end
that
of
up.
the year,
Yeah, I would have us take that up next time, at the
Sure.
time after.
could be a soft goal.
So if we could, would you be thinking that we want to do this in the morning, say
Well-
from 8 to 9 or something like that? I mean, there are school
Um,
considerations that you would have.
Well, and my hearings are usually in the morning, so in that respect, if it's a longer hearing, and I don't really want to start at the crack of dawn. I feel like you mentioned
Would
this
you-
morning.
No, I
Or not
mentioned,
yet.
I prefer.
So I think I could do this. I mean, as long as we're not going to be holding you late, Mark. If it's a 4 to 5:30, I can.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's fine.
I love the idea of driving from my office or wherever I am to Bexley by 4 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock. No, we're on the corner.
So, what about if we thought about like February 16th? We're gonna do it periodically, like one Wednesday after the other month.
I am currently available February 16th.
I think February 16th is fine.
Yeah, carry that.
Oh, my God, I can't wait till that happens for me.
I have one. It just-
Oh, I believe you. It's nice to not have to have it.
Okay, 4:00.
4 o'clock on Wednesday, the 16th.
And can we just go ahead and schedule March too?
Sure.
We'll need to avoid Bexley's spring break, I would imagine, for the mayor.
And everybody except me.
So when is Bexley's?
It would be Wednesday, the 16th. It would cover that.
On March?
March, yeah. It's also the 16th again, yeah.
No, she's saying not the 16th,
Not to.
because
jump to
that's
the
spring
16th,
break.
Yeah,
So what about the 23rd?
Yeah, and I am currently available.
the 23rd works.
And that takes us to our April
To
meeting.
our regularly scheduled meeting.
Beautiful.
And
And that's
it's
April
not
6th.
stated, so we'll meet again at 4 p.m.
That's April 6th, I'm sorry.
April what?
Is it the first Wednesday?
Second,
Second, okay, then the 13th.
13th. Do you like the idea of holding the meetings to an hour and a half?
I think that's fine. I think if we made similar progress like we did today, and I know this is faster because you've already done it, it won't be that bad.
We've got less than 2 minutes. Is there anything else you want to?
So we're scheduled to April 30th.
Correct.
Good.
Is there a motion to
I move that we adjourn.
I second that motion.
all those in favor? We adjourn.
Oh, my goodness, thank you, guys.
Punch the